Hello everyone and welcome to F.Y.I. Uxbridge, a program about the people, places, and events that are happening here in our town of Uxbridge. I'm your host Barry Giles, the station manager here at Uxbridge Community Television. And as you can see, we have the round table out, which only means one thing and one thing only. We're at town meeting time. And our guest today, our returning guest, is Town Manager Stephen Setti. Stephen.
Hey Barry, how are you?
How are we doing?
Very good.
Good. All right. Let's dive right into it like we always do. This is the fall annual town meeting, which will be held on Tuesday, October 25th at 7 p.m. at the Valley Chapel on 14 Hunter Road in Uxbridge, Mass. Location we've been using for the past several years. They've been kind enough to open their doors to allow us to do that. So let's get right to it. Article 1, transfer to stabilization.
Yeah. So right now we're still waiting on the Division of Local Services to certify free cash. They know our meeting's on the 25th, and they've assured us that we'll have the numbers. I can tell you right now what the numbers are in stabilization and in capital stabilization. Sure. General stabilization, our balance is $5,779,205, and in capital stabilization currently we have $3,350,356. Now, what we'll talk about in Article 3 is the capital, proposed capital projects for this meeting. And if all those pass, they'll total $2,340,500, which will leave a balance of $1,078,312 in capital stabilization.
Okay.
I fully expect about $4 million to be certified for free cash. But you know, once that happens, where it'll go, that's another question for the body to decide. Right, I can tell you, if you look at our general stabilization account, you know, I gave you a number about 5.7 million or 5.8 million. That represents about 12% of what our total budget is. We have a $48 million total budget. 12% of that is about that number. So the Board of Selectmen's policy is to be anywhere between 5 and 12% in stabilization, so we're in really good shape. We're at the upper end of that. I would expect then that the entire amount of free cash certified would go into our capital stabilization, which allows us to continue to do capital projects, you know, into the spring and hopefully beyond that until we get certified again next fall. Sure. I know people, you know, there's some debate as to whether that's too much in either of the accounts, but I would say with the way the economy is now, you know, we're about to go into a recession, you know, having a reserve on hand is probably a good thing. But again, I'm sure that may come up.
You never know what's going to happen down the road.
Right. So that may come up during town meeting, and we'll have to have some discussion on that.
Great.
Article 3, as I mentioned, is the capital article and capital purchases. The Capital Planning Committee has recommended a number of projects to be funded this year. I'll just kind of go through those. The school department has one project. As everybody knows, there was monies that were allocated at the spring meeting for a lighting project at the school for the football field. When bids came in, that project, as it currently is right now, came in. It's about $30,000, $32,000 short. What I agreed to with the school committee was to put an article on for an additional $32,000 to fund that project. Now, there's a couple things that are working with that. The issue has to do with the conduit that was originally run, as to whether or not that's a sufficient size to run the cables for the rest of the project. If that's the case, we may not need that $32,000, but this is here just in case. Sure. And just to assure everybody, if it's approved at town meeting and we find out after the fact that we don't need it, it goes back into capital stabilization. It's not spent somewhere else. Okay. So that's what will happen with that.
Would that need to be an act of town meeting, or would it automatically go back into?
It automatically goes back. Okay. Yeah. But what we would do is we would announce that was happening.
Yes. Absolutely.
The second item, it's a big ticket item, is from the treasurer collector, looking for $595,000, and that's to change our accounting system from what we are now as a VADAR, which is being used, to Munis. Now, there's advantages to going to Munis, and the advantages make it a lot easier. It's more user-friendly for all our employees. Secondly, it allows us to do reports a lot easier that sometimes people are requesting, especially expense ledgers, a number of other things. For my purposes, it makes budgeting a lot easier. When we get to budget time, all the data is already there, and it carries back, I think 3 years back.
Right.
And then what the look is going forward. So everybody who has the document sees everything, there, and it's current with respect to the current year as to how much has already been spent. So it makes it a lot easier for us as we do the budgeting. I know there's been some questions. A question came from the Finance Committee. Well, if we're doing this, well, wouldn't it be a corresponding reduction in staff? Well, there really isn't, because it's the same people using the system.
Right.
And also the people that need to input into the system, so we wouldn't be reducing staff. This would also affect the school department's accounts. Now the school departments, are a little bit different than the municipalities. They have universal chart of accounts, which is each 4-digit extension at the end, I believe, corresponds to a certain category within, school finance. And that's consistent through every department you would look at. But there's so many of those accounts, right, that it would, the changeover time is going to take a little bit longer than it would for the municipality. We anticipate this system to be fully in place in about 18 months. Okay. So if it's voted in, we'll begin that changeover at that point. The remainder of the articles are pretty much DPW articles. One is that we recommend $166,000 to be considered for the High Street drainage engineering and design. It's not a study, so I want to make this clear that these aren't studies that we're doing. This is we know we have a drainage issue. We've already determined. This is to engineer the solution to it. The High Street one's critical because we'd like to have that done prior to the TIP program that Mass DOT's approved for South Main Street from basically the courthouse all the way down to the middle of South Main by the town hall. And that would also all be included as part of that. So drainage would be done, the road would be paved, and we wouldn't be able to dig it up for 5 years anyway. Right. But this way that whole project's done, and that drainage issue is all taken care of. And it is a problem when we have significant rains or melting of snow and so forth. The second project that's on there is, again, an engineering and design for stormwater retrofits at Pout Pond. That needs to get done. I believe as part of this, the parking lot will also be done at Pout Pond. So that's people will be happy about that. Yep. Next project is $150,000 for the Sutton Street culvert replacement. We have a need that was identified through one of the MVP projects, that the Sutton Street culvert needs to be replaced. It's a significant job that has to happen, so we're looking for the engineering to be done on that. So if any kind of grant funding or some other project funding comes available, we have shovel-ready plans to submit for it. And if not, we'd have a cost estimate so we can go to a town meeting in the future to request the funds. Or this could be part of an infrastructure bond that we're probably looking to do within the next, prior to the next town meeting. So that would be part of that. The big item here is also a $1.1 million for, and that's a lump sum appropriation to get rid of what's being called legacy material from the DPW garage property. What that is it's old street sweepings. It's things that they take out of the catch basins. It's a number of things.
What they piled up on the parking lot there years ago.
It's in a floodplain. We have an order from DEP that needs to be replaced. Originally, when it was determined, town had to pay a significant fine, or half of the fine, with the understanding that over a period of time we'd have this done. We've been chipping away at it year on year on year, but what happens is each year the cost actually goes up. By doing this all at one shot and approving the 1.1227 million, we'd actually going to save $105,000 as if, and then rather than doing it for the next so many years.
Right.
And it gets done completely, and it's out of the way at that point. That, by the way, that I think I misspoke on one thing. The $166,000 for the High Street area drainage also includes a drainage issue that's going on around the Linwood Street area as well. So that would the design and engineering, the 166 is for both projects.
Right.
And lastly, I have asked the Capital Planning Committee for $200,000 for emergency repairs to the McCluskey roof over the cafeteria. It's in significant need of repair. Over the last 10 years, it's gotten worse from when it first happened. We had a mold issue. I had to have mold remediated out of there because of all the water. And at one point, so much water was coming in, it sounded like it was raining inside in the building.
Like a waterfall.
Right, exactly. And we couldn't keep up with barrels and everything. It just wasn't happening. So in the interim, Bruce Burrick, who's our facilities manager, and some of our DPW crew actually got up on the roof and tried to seal where some of the roof seals were actually coming apart. They actually used almost like a Flex Seal type product that they kind of put in there and then covered with a roof kind of tar paper. We had someone go up to look at that to give us a cost estimate on what it would cost to do the entire roof. They said, it'll hold for now, but in the winter with any windstorms, it's going to blow up, and so it'll probably be back in the same situation. I think the $200,000 is going to be more than enough to do the emergency repair, and as soon as that money would be appropriated, we'd go out to bid, get the project approved, and then have the work done.
Yeah.
So
we're getting close on those winter months.
Yeah, that's needed. If we go any longer, we're going to lose. We might lose the roof on that part of the building. It'd be a shame because people will hear shortly that there's a much larger project to renovate the McCluskey that we'll be going forward with, and if that's the case, that part's probably just going to be demolished, which would be too bad. The next number of articles 4 through 9, are going to be part of a consent agenda, and what will happen is the moderator will expedite consideration of those routine articles. We call them more housekeeping type things. For the majority of these, the Article 4 asks for an increase in the senior and veteran work-off program benefit. Since minimum wage has gone up, with minimum wage going up, the amount of hours that people work, as part of the $1,000 work-off they have, are a lot less. We're looking to increase it to $1,500. So that way, even if two people split a position, it's a $750 exemption to each of them. This, by the way, none of these exemptions comes from the taxpayer. It comes from the overlay account that the assessor manages. So it's not something that we need to raise and appropriate. But all of those and the rest of them, 5 through 9, are more an increase in the COLA. So the exemption amounts go up. I'll give you a quick example. On Article 5, to the amount in Clause 17C5, that amount goes up. This year was $284.86. It'll go up to $304.80. So none of these things are really that big, but also income limits go up too. So it allows, people, depending on the size of their family or if they're married, there's more assets that are taken into consideration. So that's what those 4 articles will be.
Okay.
Article 10 is what happens from time to time is we have businesses that come into town, convenience stores, perhaps even a larger supermarket that may come in that wants to have a liquor license to sell beer and wine or, alcohol in their stores, and we don't have any licenses. So what we spoke to our state legislatures, and they suggested that we petition the general court, which is the legislature, to increase the number of licenses to do this. We were really going to just look for 2 or 3 licenses. They suggested to ask for 6. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Right.
And basically what it would be only for those type businesses. It wouldn't be, for, another pub or something like that. We have a few of those licenses available,
Right.
but it'd be for those, larger type things. We've had one gentleman who wants to open a convenience store that had previously closed, and he wants to reopen it. And, had been asking for this, and he's come to the Board of Selectmen meetings, and Selectmen thought it was a good idea to carry forward.
Sure.
So that's what that is. Article 11, non-criminal disposition. And on non-criminal disposition, this is something that's come in front of the town a number of times.
Yes, I do remember these.
Right, and I think there's a lot of concern that people, thought that you're going to have a number of people running around with a ticket book and be able to ticket people for anything.
Right.
Well, that's not what this iteration of the request is looking for. It's limited it to very select situations, and I'll tell you what prompted this was a resident went to the Board of Selectmen and said, well, we have fire hydrants that are buried because of the amount of snow, and I guess they was in a particular apartment complex, and a neighbor just plowed all their snow and buried the fire hydrant. It's like, well, that's against the law.
Right.
Well, we had no way to enforce that. So even if the police went up there and said, yeah, this is what's happening,
Right.
we have no way to levy a fine or do anything like that. So we're looking at this in very limited situations. So it is in those type situations for, people burying a fire hydrant. It's going to be if there's a winter parking ban, and on state roads it can be enforced by the police, but on local roads it can't. And so now that's going to,
Interesting.
right. So now it's going to allow us to enforce, if someone's violating a winter parking ban, so plows can get through and do their job. There's another area with the fire department where if a lot of false alarms, fire alarms going off, and whatever, even some burglar alarms and so forth that go off, and they're not, it's people didn't set it right or left the door open or whatever it might be. So it's going to, if it becomes excessive,
Right.
there'll be an opportunity for them to fine.
Not if you accidentally set off your alarm. It's just
if it's a
something
one-off,
continuous.
right? If it's
Right.
a one-off, it's not going to happen. But
Right.
if they're going back all the time,
Right.
and something needs to be fixed that's not being fixed, then there's an ability to level your fine. The fines on these are $100, so it's not. And in some cases, it would be, a fine that would increase,
Right.
over so many days. But for the most part, it's smaller. I believe there's some other things with respect to animal control that are on there as well. But that's the limit. So we're not going into fines that the building commissioner would be
Right.
able to, or the Board of Health, or one of the other agencies that has some enforcing power. We're putting it in here, see how it works.
Right.
And if it doesn't work, then then obviously it could always be reversed and voted out.
Okay.
So that's number 11. The next two, 12 and 13, are being brought forward by the ZBA. It's a change to the zoning bylaw. One is section 415 for signs. We don't have a sign ordinance at this point. What we do have, and what people are always referring to, is billboards. So which isn't really what people are looking for when they say, "Can I put a sign up?"
Right.
It's more for a business or something along those lines. And currently, as it stands, it's only allowed, I believe, by special permit.
Okay.
So this way, it would take that out. So this way, so we should be, that should correct a lot of that situation there. And the other one has to do with zoning bylaw with respect to accessory dwelling units. They're more commonly known as in-law apartments.
Yes.
So it would allow for them. But also would allow for a trigger an inspection anytime a second kitchen or a bathroom or something like that's being proposed. So we would be able to have a better idea where they are. The allowance of the dwelling would be allowed for that particular family member. It's not something that's going to be in place if somebody's going to rent out
Right.
a basement or something. That wouldn't be included in here. and that would be a violation of that, of the zoning. But for those specific issues, and there's a lot of them, you know, a lot of people now are having family members, you know, as they get older, you know, age at home versus somewhere else, and this just, you know, formalizes and recognizes the fact that, you know, that the town accepts that.
Right.
So that's what that would do. The remainder of the articles, 14 through 22, are all brought by citizens petition, and that's really out of the realm of the town for to have any comment on. But all in all, I think some of the things we're looking to do, especially with the consent agenda, the town portion of this should go fairly quickly. You know, there'll be some questions, I'm sure, on capital and those kind of things. But for the most part, that part should go quickly, and then would leave the remainder of the meeting to decide these other issues that, you know, that are brought forward by citizens petition.
And of course, you know, if people want more information in regards to these, the Finance Committee Board of Selectmen had hearings, which are archived on our website at uxbridgetv.org. Quick plug. But people can go back and review the discussions and the votes and various information needed for all articles in discussion here also. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say the warrant is up on the town website.
Yes.
All the information with respect to all the recommendations from all the various committees are in the warrant, so you're not going to be shuffling a lot of different pieces.
I got mine off the
you're not going to get a lot of pieces of paper. I will say, I hope everybody looks at the new cover of the warrant, and I give Ellen Welch in my office and Alex Klaus, who's in our office, a lot of kudos for changing that, and also even, you know, the rules of the meeting, so, you know, kind of changes some of that.
Yeah, it's a very thorough report, very thorough information for everybody to be prepared for town meeting.
And also, just as a reminder, you know, we're still dealing with COVID in a lot of different ways. So the COVID restrictions that we've always had in place will still be there. You know, if people feel comfortable wearing a mask, please do so.
Right.
There'll be hand washing or hand sanitizing stations all around, and wherever people can, to spread out and you know, as much as they can. That's the beauty of the facility.
Right.
You
Very
know,
large.
We do have quite a bit of room, and it's also makes it, no matter where you're sitting, it's easy to see what's being discussed and how the votes are going and all those things. And I will also tell you, because we had an issue at one of our last meeting with respect to questions on the clickers, and so I can tell you that all the batteries have been swapped out,
replaced, and tested,
and everything's been tested. There will also be 2 test slides prior to getting into any of the votes of the meeting, so people will be able to check their clickers.
Great.
I half expect, you know, people, even though the answer probably is, you know, who's the first president of the United States? Right, exactly. And then we all know it's George Washington. Yeah. And somebody will click something else. Yep, just to make sure their clicker's working. Absolutely. And that's okay. But just to assure everybody that, you know, we took that seriously and made sure that, you know, all the batteries are swapped out. So. Great. All right.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Once again, just a quick reminder, Fall Annual Town Meeting, Tuesday, October 25th at the Valley Chapel at 7 p.m. And that is on 14 Hunter Road in Uxbridge, where we've been holding it for the past few years and things like that. If you would like to see any of the hearings or meetings pertaining to the information here in the town warrant for the Fall Town Meeting, you can go to our website at uxbridgetv.org and go to the archives section, and you can review all the meetings that were held there. Once again, for the warrant itself, you can go to the town website at uxbridge-ma.gov. It's right on the homepage, right there, easy to click on to give you more information. So once again, thank you, Stephen, for coming on and giving us the information, and thank you for watching F.Y.I. Uxbridge.